Hey everybody, Grumpy with you again along with Mr. Wolverine.
Hi.
Thought we'd show, well, it's going to be a bit of a history lesson today, let's put it that way, and we get to show off a few of Mr. Wolverine's toys, for lack of a better term. So we're going to start over here on the table, let Mr. Wolverine do some talking.
Well, this is the latest acquisition, the Vickers K. But really, to give you an introduction into Vickers K, we've got to talk about the earlier Lewis guns. So, I had to wait 54 years for this. You're just going to have to wait a few more minutes. Okay, friends, what we got here is we've got an original British BSA Birmingham Small Arms 303 Lewis gun. This one I think is dated middle of World War I. These were the standard ground gun for the British Commonwealth troops throughout World War I. Now, when the first aircraft came along, they wanted to put a machine gun on it. Well, they started shooting at each other with handguns and 30-30 lever actions and house bricks and hand grenades, anything they could get up there. Then the Lewis gun was a favourite for aircraft because it was much lighter than the heavy water-cooled Vickers and Maxims.
Well, and easier for the pilot to manipulate the ammunition changes and that if he needed to. Yes,
now these were fed from a 30-round pan magazine. And again, the big difference between this and the Vickers K, and the Vickers K mags are here, is that when the gun long gas system, as the action is operated, you can see the magazine is actually rotated round.
Reminds me of an old Viewmaster I used to have as a kid. Every time you push the button, the thing advanced forward to a new picture.
So when the empty magazine is off the gun, the center is locked. You have to put in your loading tool, and now you can spin the center. So to load these girls,
I'll maybe hold this up so they can see what you're loading. Just if anybody's wondering, all the firearms you're seeing today are fully functional. These are not D-Watts, these are working pieces of history.
So what we have to do here, we have to lay the rim in the end, and we turn it one rotation at a time, and we would go round. Mustn't miss one at all. And you go round twice. And this centre is a spiral, and as you get round the second turn, they spiral down to the bottom. And when you pull your loader out, these rounds are locked in place. And when the loader comes out, this doesn't move. So as you saw, the action ratchets the magazine round and round.
If you see the inside of this, you can just see how realistic, how simplistic this whole setup really is. There's very little to malfunction. There's very little to fall out and lose.
The only problem is the complete underside of the magazine is exposed to the elements.
Yes.
Now, if you were sitting in a trench loading this and the shell went off and you got a lot of debris coming down and you get stuff going here.
Yeah.
And I've discovered to my horror too that these, when they're loaded, are heavy, and if you drop them onto a rock or a hard surface, you will actually dent the side of the magazine and then it is scrapped.
Becomes non-functional.
Unique feature on the Lewis gun too, this, I don't know, can we zoom in on here? Can we see here? But we've got the, this circular motion is where there's a clockwork spring. Actually got a spare spring here in the gunner's tool roll. That is a clockwork spring, this is a broken one, that goes in there and operates the gun.
So I could wind my pocket watch and the gun at the same time.
Now, we're going to lift this big, now a unique feature on the Lewis. We're going to have to do another video on these later on in detail, but the Lewis gun, you can see the end of it here is the aluminum cooling fins, and these cooling fins run right down to here. The muzzle of the gun stops about here, and the muzzle blast draws air out, so it draws air in here and it comes out the other end, and the idea is that going down the cooling fins it cools the barrel. Because although being a light machine gun, it doesn't feature a quick change barrel. And trust me, after 2 or 3 mags, this outer casing is getting unpleasantly hot. So, let's just go out of the way. Now this fella is a real favourite. What we have here is we have the basic ground gun with the aluminum cooling fins done away with and a slimmer jacket. And this was would be the Royal Flying Corps then in World War I. This is an observer's gun. Got a couple of other unique features on it. This incidentally is just to stand for display purposes. If I tilt it around here, you'll see these two holes in the back here. Took me ages to find out what they were for. It is actually for bolting on a electrical heater, so a little block heater if you like, plugged into the aircraft's electrical circuit to warm this so the oil, because here's your operating mechanism for the magazine, so the oil wouldn't stiffen and freeze up and jam the gun.
Would these be the same type that they would have run on the balloons? You see, I've seen pictures of the Lewis on the observation balloons.
Probably. And then I think this is the Mark II aircraft gun. The Mark III, they even did away with this tube, so the barrel and the gas tube was free to be cooled by the air. And then the other unique feature is, don't laugh, don't laugh.
I like it every time I see it, I know.
This is the Norman wind vane front sight. It was supposed to automatically compensate for the slipstream and the movements of the plane to assist the gunner. It's unique, but I must admit that if you do any research and you look at a lot of photographs of World War I aircraft, it's quite common to come across this. But it's a bit of a rarity. I've never come across another one. And I've certainly never worried about it, using it on the range with a crosswind.
No.
Not too much more to say about her. Some of these had 97 round drums. The drum was twice as big, but they wouldn't interchange because you have to have a longer loading spigot on the inside.
Right.
And you have to have taller sights, so they're only used for aircraft. And very often the rear butt has been replaced with a single spade grip.
Right.
Now,
so that's where these have, so far making the progression. So now we're going to come to the...
well, what happened towards the end of World War I, aircraft speeds had increased. The ranges they were having to engage each other at had increased too. So there was a requirement for a newer, more modern gun to replace the Lewis that would have a higher rate of fire. And this is where the Vickers K comes in. So take this girl out of the way.
Oops. I'll hand that over to you and I'll get your stand.
This is an absolute beauty. Let's just go improvise desktop mount, because I don't have a fairy swordfish parked outside the pillar.
Now just for everybody out there, I don't know if you realize just how rare a Vickers K is. These...
I've been waiting for one of these for 54 years, and this one showed up in an auction in Australia, and then finally it came in the door Friday, so I haven't even had it here a week. Like the Lewis, it's long stroke, gas operated. Unlike the Lewis, we've gone to a conventional coil spring, a double coil spring, buffered sear, tilting block bolt as opposed to the rotating bolt in the Lewis, and lightened parts. The rate of fire is phenomenal. We're in the 900 to 1200 rounds a minute, whereas the Lewis was thumping them out at 450.
You're up into that MG34 range.
We got the standard mags were 60 or 100 rounds, and there was experimental 300 and 600 round drums. But at that time, the belt-fed Browning was introduced, and although this in early trials was more reliable than the belt-fed Browning, the belt-fed Browning was ideal for fitting into the slimmer wings of the modern 40s, but of the more modern fighters that were then coming onto the market.
This is such a very slimmed down, elegant looking machine gun as a gun of this type goes. It's very dainty.
It is. It surprised me when it came through the door, when I unpacked it, because this is the first and only Vickers K I've ever handled. And I was just amazed at how light and how slim, how dainty she really was.
Makes my old Bren guns just look downright behemoth.
Big difference on the magazines with these girls is that the magazine has a clockwork spring in it, like a Thompson. So no longer does the gun mechanism have to crank the magazine round, which takes up power.
Right.
This has got a big clockwork spring, and I'll show you later because we've got to wind these two up. I have done them by myself, but without the proper winding tool that I've never even seen. It's only 3.5 turns, but
I would imagine there's enough pressure on that.
takes a little bit of cranking. Non-reciprocating bolt handle on the left-hand side. As I say, it's a tilting block bolt. We keep the bolts out of all of these toys for storage here. They're tucked away elsewhere, but the bolt is a chromed bolt. Nothing much to it.
No, very light.
Safety catch is unique. Safety catch is just this rolling button on the rear of the grip, and it's got to be one of the most positive, easiest safety catches to work. I was surprised how small the grip was. I've got medium large hands, and I would only have a very thin glove getting in here. You think of those poor aerial gunners, a pair of sheepskin mitts. You'd have to take them off before you could operate the gun. So, the magazine. Now, the magazines are unique. To load these ones, first of all we have to make sure we've got no spring pressure on the clockwork spring. So, they're free to rotate. Then we have to...
Oh, it's a fair spring on that, isn't it?
We swing out one of the feed lips. Now we can rotate the magazine round. Here is a dummy round. You can see I should say dummy round. I said the follower.
Right.
See the follower in
Yep.
place? So now we go to the next spot, and we just drop a round in, and then we return it on, and then we drop a round in, and we rotate it. And you do that 100 times. It takes a little while to do it. These ones are loaded.
Right.
And so
that one's ready to go, except we have to wind it.
we have to wind it. So when you got your 100th round in, everything stops, you slide your pivoting feed lip into the locked position so it grips around. Then you turn it over. I'm just going to grab a rag so we don't scratch our table up here. And hello Andrea, can we see that?
You want us to come forward a bit for it with Andrea?
Ah, this one is conveniently marked wind, and it's got the arrow pointing in it. And I treated this just like a Thompson drum. I loaded this Saturday and I just put half a turn of spring pressure on.
To keep the shells in place?
Just keep everything in place. So I'm going to just let that off. Okay, and as the book says, this hook should be level with the front locking piece, which it is. Right, now hang on Brent, we've got to do half, 1.5, 2, 2.5.
You wouldn't want that coming loose and wrapping your knuckles, I'll tell you.
3. The book says 3.5, but I am going to put the block in there. Now she's ready to go. And you're not getting off lately, we've got 2 to do. And I was doing these at the weekend by myself, I tell you, it nearly took my fingers up there once. So we just back her off.
Yeah, I can see, unless you had some kind of jig to place this in, you wouldn't want to try it on your own too often.
Oh. 1, 2, 2.5, 3, getting in that 3. Oh, she went straight in at 3. There, that's good. Little inspection hatch to check your clockwork spring, and we're good to go.
Convenient little carry handle, just to, carry it like your lunch kit. Now, while this thing made its name for itself in an aircraft, you should tell everybody where this actually gained its fame and fortune from, or what unit used it that was famous.
Well, it served throughout the war in an observer's gun in some aircraft, like the Fairy Sword.
Yeah.
But it was quickly replaced with belt-fed Brownings, and preferably in a turret with multiple guns.
Right.
So they become obsolete. Now, David Sterling formed the SAS in North Africa, and like all special forces when they're created, there was no love lost between him and the regular army.
Right.
And the story goes that he went to the stores to draw firearms, machine guns, and there was nothing available, and he was palmed off on these obsolete Vickers K guns that nobody wanted. I understand, after having used this, once they tried them, and obviously they were fitted to vehicles, once they used them, they would have gone back and got every Vickers K they could get their hands on, because it was ideally suited to them.
It was what, 4 to a Jeep?
Well, yes, when they got the American Jeep over there, they actually mounted these in a pair, so the passenger sitting next to the driver would have a pair, which would fire forward, cross in front of the driver, big arc of fire, plus another pair in the back. And on one famous raid on a German aerodrome in North Africa, they drove 17 or 18 Jeeps onto the airfield, formed up in 2 lines, and drove down the runway with 64 Vickers Ks firing, and shot up 2 rows of aircraft.
Well, the SAS in North Africa were responsible for more aircraft destroyed than the Air Force was. They took as many out on the ground as they did as were taken out of the air.
So the SAS used them in North Africa. The airborne forces used them a little after D-Day. There was an improvised ground version where they put a buttstock on the back and a bipod. But as an infantry gun, it must have been god awful. It would have been a real pig to carry with a heavy drum in the middle. It wouldn't have balanced. It just wouldn't have been very
No.
good. But vehically mounted, very good. They fitted some to armoured fighting vehicles and to tanks for anti-aircraft fire.
Right.
Not much more to tell you about it right now. It's gas operated. There's a gas plug in here. No gas adjustment. Just one rate of fire.
How long did they stay in service with when did they phase them out? Does anybody know?
Rumour has it that they were used by some English forces into the 60s. I kind of laughed when I first read that, but after playing with this girl, I can understand in some applications.
Yes.
Sneaking about, a pair of them poking out the side window of the Land Rover would be quite intimidating. As I say, this one came from Australia. We're going to resume this video on the range where we'll test fire her. The tripod that it came with is maybe an improvised war measure the Australians made up, because they did press them in for ground use in the early part of the war when Australia was threatened with invasion from Japan, or it simply may have been a tripod that the Australian collector had made up to display the gun on. I'm not sure. It is a little dinky and a little flimsy for this girl, as I found out to my cost Friday.
All right, well, we're going to get this up to the range, so join us for part 2.